the transaction costs for doing transactions in ADA, reviewing the minimum UTXO, and of interest mostly to stake pools will be this minimum pool cost. Currently that is set to 340 ADA. And 340 ADA was something quite different when ADA was 8 cents versus where ADA might be at $1.20. So this is a number we're going to be revising, certainly moving it lower. These minimum fees are just that, a minimum. If you want to leave a higher fee on the pool, that's fine, but this is going to give more options to people if they want to have lower fees on there. Other comments about these changes, there is a minimal impact on revenue. Most of the revenue in the system is being paid through inflation coming out of coins from the reserve. So changes in fees at this point are a very small change. It's less than 0.2%. Across the board. And that is mostly, and only the largest players, the private pools and the largest public pools are the ones that are most affected. Smaller pools, less so. So that's just kind of my general comment on fees. Expect to be seeing more about that. I'm trying to, we're still working through the exact levels of what should be set, but really it's kind of the mindset I would encourage is think about rolling fees back in ADA terms from, so they're consistent with dollar terms where ADA was about 8 cents, 15 cents when some of those fees were last updated. And going forward, we'll probably maintain them. One challenge with fees is raising fees could cause transactions to bounce, whereas moving fees lower is much less risk. So we'll be more cautious raising fees than we will lowering them. But that's one of the reasons just to make a big bang change and then from there kind of keep them pegged to dollars in the short term while we work out exactly what the correct fee structure should be.
That's great. Thanks.
Time frame from this change, I'll just say, I would like to get this done as soon as possible. The change is a parameter update, so there's not a code change. There's nothing stopping this. It's mainly making sure that we have all the right concerns addressed. So fees are kind of a multidimensional problem. They affect the security of the network. They affect the economics of businesses coming onto the network. So different things like partnerships, have people considered, security researchers are involved. Some of our operations teams make sure that these fees are going to be appropriate for maintaining the security of the network. So there's a number of different players that we're engaging, making sure all those concerns are addressed. From stake pools, I just want to raise Ben is the person to talk to. Ben is your advocate for right now for any of these issues, and he's someone we're engaging. So as you have any comments, feel free to Ben. So time frame, I really would like to see this in the next couple of weeks. It's really just a question of who making sure that we've checked all the bases that people, the reductions, divide 8 cents by $1.20 and you'll probably get a ballpark number. And fee changes are kind of an interesting thing. And so governance is going to be an open question for some of these, whether that is going to be done long-term. There's a variety of different views on that. So that's something that actually we have a consulting group that is currently advising us on the structure of that going forward. I'm trying not to front run anything they're going to say on that.
One thing, Colin, I just realized I've forgotten a tradition of ours, which is just to remind everybody these calls are confidential. And what we're saying is you can talk about what you know, but we're asking that you don't reference who you've heard it from or where you heard it from. So it's totally fine that you know what Colin's talking about, but this is kind of like a closed door call. So I think we've explained that many times, but for anyone that's on the call and this is the first time, just an important note, it'd be great not to see tweets later saying like Ben said this or Colin said that, right? So sorry to interrupt you there, Colin.
Yeah, no, in terms of things, this is going to be right now, there's kind of an advisory board. We're working with the model of having a number of different people representing the different concerns for the group. And while we're working out what that long-term strategy is, I don't think that we want to wait to change fees for that long-term strategy. We want to actually get some of those moving through. In terms of Daedalus rankings, certainly things like the minimum pool fee do disadvantage smaller pools. So if pools can drop that, they will be more competitive on Daedalus. The Daedalus rankings may have a number of other challenges to them, which I don't want to discuss, but it is something that will impact Daedalus rankings potentially, because it's one of the economic parameters you can change.
There's a few questions in chat there, by the way, Colin.
Let's see.
Don't want to put you on the spot, so I'll let you pick out what you're going to answer.
So will it be a change in how pledge is calculated? No, Daedalus rankings are not changing at this time. There is a lot of discussion on Daedalus rankings, but this change, it is an economic parameter, so it factors into the Daedalus rankings, but it's not that. Can we have a vote on fee changes? Well, the voting and governance is something that's still under discussion, and it will probably be something that will evolve over time. So those are things I can give you my opinions, but they're not certainly not going to be necessarily the outcomes. Saturation levels. I'm not sure what that question's asking, so I'm not going to do that. Transaction fees, yes, transaction fees are included in this parameter or in this set of changes. So the transaction fees would be coming down significantly as well in the short term. K is not changing at this time. I can talk about K in a lot more detail at a different time, but until we actually change the way that pledge is rewarded, I don't think that updating K is going to have the impact that we would hope. So economically right now, I'll tell you that any large pool would be motivated to split into two smaller pools. And so I don't think that we're going to get the benefit from the K change if we just did K right now, given the current price of ADA.
Really good. Are there any questions? I know Colin's got a hard stop. So if anybody's got a question for Colin, open your mic or put it into the chat so I can be sure he gets time to answer it.
And also feel free to send Ben any concerns, questions. I'm happy to answer them offline. And he's going to be definitely the person that's kind of representing those concerns to the wider group of people evaluating the changes. So definitely put Ben on the spot.
Thank you. Colin says, just double checking is one of the parameters that's being talked about, the minimum fee being lowered from fee 40.
Yes, so this fee could be lowered. You can leave it higher if you like. This fee is interesting because it is one of the fees that can be changed. So you also have a variable fee to play with. Would this hurt SPOs? Maybe in the sense that lowering any of your fees, whether you're lowering your variable rate or your fixed rate, potentially mean less income. Now, it may make you more competitive in the sense that if delegators are looking for pools that have the higher reward, that gives you another choice to do it. And one thing that's important about these fee changes is these are minimum fees. So you can leave higher fees if you want to leave a fee of $340 on a pool. Absolutely, feel free. But if you want to lower it, you know, that is an option that's definitely out there for people.
Yeah, it interacts with the influence factor, right, Colin? So if you lower the min UTXO, then there's going to, with the current A0 formula, you might then expect to require more pledge to compensate for things to stay where they were.
Oh, absolutely. These are all kind of complex, multidimensional problems that have a number of different things.
We're aware that the current level, when the parameter set at 340 ADA, that was based on operating cost as it was notified to us as of July, and obviously with the rise in the price of ADA, the entire economic situation has changed quite a lot.
Okay, great.
Some of the race to the bottom stuff I can address offline if you want to reach out to me. It's certainly a concern that we have as well. But at the other hand, it is having pools that have fees that are much too high also creates a situation where smaller pools are just much less attractive to delegate to. And so that creates a problem for growing delegation for those pools as well.
I have a question in my DMs, Colin, where someone's asking me, changing fees could make some SPOs reduce their infrastructure due to costs and not blocks assigned to their pools or low number of blocks. Does that make sense?
I think what's being said there, Ben, is that if you lower the fees that pools are getting, then of course the reaction of some operators will be to reduce their cost, their actual cost. Obviously, they don't have to reduce the cost they're advertising to users, but others could then perhaps outcompete them. So it's one of the reasons why it's very useful, would be very useful for us to know what people's actual operating costs were, so what were acceptable as minimum operating costs. And we only have a very general idea about that, I think.
And just I see a comment there about the pool rankings. That for a small pool, that cost is paid by the delegators of the pools. So across a large pool, it's spread across everyone. On a smaller pool, it's only the delegators in that pool. So that creates quite a difficulty for smaller pools in deciding how to structure their what they're charging delegators, whether they're taking it through the percentage cost or on the absolute cost. So it is, and just to say that race to the bottom stuff is absolutely a concern of ours. That is definitely a challenge we're working on. So if you've got ideas on that, love to talk in some more detail. Happy to do that offline.
Okay. Yeah. So if anybody's got feedback, you can DM me on Twitter or drop me an email. I'll put my email in Slack. Sorry, we're not in Slack. We're in Zoom. So you've all got my email address there. You can let me know if you've got thoughts you want to bring up. I'm getting a few DMs, so I'm just going to go through that. While I'm reading these DMs, I know we're talking about ranking. I've promised everyone, we did a big survey in December, January. We are writing an executive summary. Africa's coming. We had a couple of people that were ill. That is coming. The two insights, and this isn't you're setting sort of expectations, but one, I can see clearly that one of the critical issues is uncertainty around SPOs. That's one of the things strategically we're trying to address with that executive summary. And the second insight that I'm aware of and talking about with the teams is the need to differentiate. So sometimes these ranking discussions are quite a protocol-led discussion. As I've joined, I've had to sort of get up to speed, right? And so those conversations are technical. So it took me a while to realize that some of these were protocol technical-based discussion. And actually, there's a marketing aspect to this. There's a delegation aspect to this. And so the ability to differentiate is, again, a critical issue. And so those issues are being discussed in this exec summary. I do need to make sure that when we publish that, the teams and the people who are involved in the discussion agree for me to publish it. So totally my fault that we haven't got it up yet, but I am working on it and doing my best to give you a short update on that. And Sava, can I ask you to give us an update while I furiously read through these DMs and tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, and then give us your update, please.
Sure. So maybe you haven't seen me much. The other guys are doing this amazing job around communicating to you. I'm doing something different. I'm product manager for Node. Let me give you what's happening last week this time. So we had an unexpected network behavior on last epoch change, second to last, okay? It was basically on Thursday. We saw that for 25 minutes, blocks were not being made in a proper way. So we had immediately urgency meeting and we had some options on the table. Now, here is the fun part I want to tell you. Our tools and our organization and processes have grew that much that in 2 days we already had a release that is fixing the issue. What happened? We had several options. We tried each one of them. Duncan and his guys gave good proposals. We try to see which one works the best. So Sam and DevOps were testing those, and when we pinpointed which one is the best way to go, QA did an amazing job. Now, why is that important? QA has done so much automation tests that ran automatically overnight while we were sleeping on Saturday, and the next day we already had some view which way is the best to go. So it was really good team effort that in 48 hours we had something that fixed the problem, and Stakepool operators, all of you, have done an amazing job to upgrade, and we had over 70 or 80% of pools upgraded in 48 hours, which is amazing. So this problem shouldn't be happening anymore in that extent. Maybe Duncan and Kevin can give more details later. But the good thing is that we had this amazing feedback from SPOs, and our success of the new release directly depended on the number of the SPOs that upgraded. And if that number was much smaller, we could have had the same problem on the epoch change. So thank you very much for that. On other news, we are integrating extended UTXO. Everything is going well. Maybe we have a different channels for Bluetooth and how those things are going. I don't want to bother you about that much. So all our focus is on delivering Bluetooth as soon as we can. That's the #1 priority. And when that goes through, along the way, we will do a zero change that Colin was mentioning. So it's not the value, it's the formula that we are going to do. And with Alonzo hard fork, with new A0 rebranded, we will be able to deal with the K again. On other teams, I know we are doing portfolio manager, which is basically delegating from one wallet to several stake pools. So when that is enabled within the wallets, it will be a really good success for K change in the next instance. Colin mentioned the other fun parts. I'm going to skip them. So that's it. Do we have any questions for me? Then no.
There's a question about QA, but I'm happy to answer that one.
Yeah.
And RT view as well.
RT view, yes. Dennis, who is primarily focused on RT view, is doing some things in parallel that are enabling us to do better profiling and benchmarking. So currently, we are planning one release, I believe in this quarter. I'm not sure if it's May. And afterwards, we will see how it goes. Definitely, RTView has some good traction and great ideas we can do, but we need to balance it out with Bluetooth and Alonzo hard fork, so we can iterate quickly if there are any changes necessary along the way based on the feedback from testing.
Excellent. Thanks, Ava. Just a reminder, because like a lot more people have joined, the tradition is we're operating under Chatham House rules, which means the call is confidential. You're free to talk about what you hear, but we're just asking that you don't say where you heard it or who you heard it from. So that's the format or the way these calls work, which is why we don't publish a recording afterwards, which I'm asked about frequently. Duncan, could you give us an introduction to who you are, what you do, and an update, please?
The hat I wear is the Cardano Technical Architect hat. To a first approximation, it's all my fault whenever anything goes wrong. So maybe I should just briefly talk about the 126.2 update, what the actual bug was, what the fix was, and talk about what we're planning to do to do better on that sort of stuff in the future. And then I can give an update on the peer-to-peer status, because I think that's something that people are quite interested in, and there's quite a lot to say actually. So on the bug that we had with the performance at the epoch boundary, the problem was that, well, the problem has been that we took a sensible development shortcut when we were doing Shelley, so that certain bulk computations that have to happen in the ledger were being done at specific times, like at the epoch boundary or at the rewards calculation point. Ideally, these things should be spread out over time, and that is what we will do in future. But we took to get Shelley out the door, months earlier. We took shortcuts, and that was one of them, was of doing those calculations simply at particular points in time, and then as those calculations have got bigger and bigger, that eventually becomes a problem, which everyone, of course, saw previously with the reward calculation point. Previously we were getting on for a minute or two of pause time at the point at which rewards are calculated, and we eventually decided it was time to do something about that one, and we did some extra development work to spread out that computation over time, so that now at the reward boundary there's almost nothing that happens because that computation gets spread out. Now, we had always been planning to do the same thing for the things that happened at the epoch boundary, but what caught us off guard was so there's another bulk computation that happened at the epoch boundary, but the thing that we had missed was that once D hits 0, there's a problem that was unmasked at that point. So this computation that happens at the epoch boundary was happening each time a node was trying to forge a block immediately after the boundary. The first block so each node that's trying to forge blocks is checking to see, is it the leader in each slot.
Duncan, sorry to interrupt you. There's just a lot of messages about asking you to turn your mic volume up or to speak up or scream into the mic very loudly.
How is that? Can you hear me better now?
That's wonderful.
Yeah?
Silky smooth, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I'll try not to jump back too far, but so the fundamental problem was that this bulk calculation, that only takes about 10 seconds or so, that was happening at the epoch boundary, was being repeated, and we hadn't realized that was going to be what would happen. That was unmasked by the fact that D hit 0, because this is repeated. It was being repeated each time a block producing node was checking to see if it's the leader, because we were advancing the ledger state, and when we advance the ledger state across the epoch boundary, we have to do this 10 seconds of computation, and so that was happening for every slot leadership check. Now, that didn't used to be a problem, which is why we hadn't noticed, because the very first slot in every epoch would be produced by one of the BFT nodes, and so and then thereafter, all of the slot leadership checks are trivially cheap again. So that was why that was missed, and then the solution that we deployed in 126 adjusted the cost so that we weren't paying that 10 seconds at each point. Now, it's a completely legitimate question to say, well, what about QA, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we've spent a little bit of time understanding it now, and at least my analysis of this is that, in some sense, this was quite a tricky bug, because it's not a classical, functional correctness bug that would be caught by our sort of standard, functional correctness tests. And in some sense, it's not even a performance bug. Or not in a normal sense. So, in most systems, you can usually treat, correctness issues and performance issues separately. Now, we know that that's not true in Ouroboros. In Ouroboros has timing constraints, so performance constraints that impact the correctness of the system. So, we know that with Ouroboros, we do have to think about timing and performance, both as a performance and as a correctness issue. So there definitely was a weak spot here, where we have very comprehensive and systematic tests for certain classes of bugs, but this one fell in the combination of both performance intersecting with correctness in a way that bypassed our existing comprehensive tests. So whenever you have a new kind of bug like this, the right thing to do as an engineer is to go back and say, how would we catch this class of bug in future? And my analysis of that is to say, what we need is to basically, there are techniques that we know of, if we put the right effort in, to deal with this class of bugs systematically with component level tests, where we establish quantitative timeliness agreements between different parts of the system to say, this must happen within a certain amount of time. Forecasting the ledger state into a future slot, which is what we used when we're checking slot leadership. That must happen within 10 milliseconds, and then we would write benchmarks to demonstrate that is always the case. and we can, then check it. And in this case, what would, if we had those QTAs in place right now, we know for sure right now that we would violate them because we still have this shortcut of doing bulk calculations at the epoch boundary. So part of the solution is to say, that's not a shortcut that we can take anymore. It was the right thing to do to get Shelley out the door a few months early, but we can't do that in the long term. In the long term, we have to get to a situation where the cost is the same in every single slot and no extra special cost at the epoch boundary, or at least within some bound measured in milliseconds. So that's the solution or that's the kind of solution that we'll be proposing internally to deal with this in future. So it's a systematic, comprehensive approach to dealing with this category of bug.
It's probably also worth mentioning, Duncan, that it's not something which is purely deterministic. It depends on which pools have which leadership checks. So you could run the system under real world conditions, you could monitor it, and unless particular conditions occurred, you wouldn't necessarily see the issue cropping up.
Which is why, and it's for exactly that reason, that we don't generally rely on kind of large scale system testing to find these tricky bugs, because you're not likely to find the deep problems just by running the system in one or two scenarios, whereas the kind of component level tests that we run, where we do lots of things in simulation, we're able to generate tens, hundreds of thousands of scenarios, and that way we get much more comprehensive coverage than if we were to do just like run a test net, which really only kind of gives you one scenario. So yes, it's for exactly that reason we try to find bugs that are much deeper in our tests than you would find in production. And so we want to apply that same approach, but to this category of bug, of this performance correctness intersection bugs. Unless there's any other questions.
That was great, Duncan.
I'll talk
I'm
about
getting you
development status if there's time for that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share with you a little visualization. Right. This is from a little while ago, but I'm not going to screen share it. I'll just post the YouTube link. So this is from actually back in December. We will do some updated versions of these visualizations, which for future milestones. But because in particular this one's like an hour long, so you don't want to sit through it. We'll do some more pithy versions later. So the current status that we have of the peer-to-peer code is that internally, Coral has deployed a number of test nodes on the mainnet, running in the peer-to-peer mode, and the visualization that we have here is from his branch back in December. We're further along now, of course, but and what we're doing there is what he's doing more recently is running test nodes in the peer-to-peer mode on the mainnet, connecting to your relays.
Are you sharing something, because I don't see it?
No, I just shared a link in the chat to a
got
YouTube
it.
video, which is Carl's visualization of this thing. If someone wants to screen share it and play it, you're most welcome to.
Ben, maybe.
Well, I know how to screen share, but I don't know if the audio will play through.
There's no audio. There's no audio for the video.
Oh, okay. Let's do it then.
So as long as you can still hear me, that's fine.
Okay, let me just get rid of this Bob De Niro video that I'm.
So so what we have at the moment is we can run, at least from our development branch, which is not quite ready for prime time, but enough for us to run it and see some results. We can run a node in the peer-to-peer mode, and it discovers peers by looking at the relays that you guys register on the chain, and we do that by sampling from the state distribution. So it's partially weighted by the state distribution, and it's slightly biased towards the smaller pools that have less stake. So it is weighted by stake, but not completely fully. So that means that it is still possible randomly, even small pools should get their relays selected sometimes. Now, so we start by discovering, knowing about a lot of nodes, and we do that by, as I said, looking on the chain, looking at the relays that you register and sampling them by the state distribution. And then there's a choice of which ones do we actually connect to. And so the mechanism that we use is that we start by sampling them randomly from the ones that we know about, which themselves are sampled from the state distribution. So, initially in this example that Carl is doing, he's running eight upstream peers, but in the end we'll probably do more like 20. So those are initially just picked randomly. And then over time, that's optimized by getting rid of the worst and replacing them with more random ones. The worst on a particular metric. So that's not a saying that they're objectively bad. It's just that they're not useful peers or less useful peers from the perspective of that node. So the metric that we use is one that is based on our work with a research team that we've been working with for the last 6 months to figure out what are good policies, so that that by a choice of a local policy based on local information that can be observed locally by each node, they can pick their peers in such a way that overall the peer-to-peer graph as a whole is optimized towards minimizing the block distribution times while also being robust to adversarial behavior. So the particular metric that we have gone with is one where we look at what we call an upstreaminess metric. And if you look on the left-hand side, in the top left corner there, you can see there's the various pool names, and the number next to them is their current upstreaminess metric. So what is that? That is a metric where we say each time a header arrives, if that header later makes it into our chain, so we sort of look at our recent chain, we look at the headers, we look at the blocks that we've included into our recent chain, and then we say, well, for those headers that we did incorporate into our chain, so they're definitely valid, they're part of the true chain, we look at which peer gave us that header first. So from which peer did we first see that header? Who gave us that header first? And the peer that gave us that header first, we give them a point. And we just do that continuously. And that's what you see the numbers here. So that the higher that count, that means it's the more frequent that pool has been the first peer to give us a particular header, which is a rough indication of them being, between us and the original block producer. So they are kind of upstream of us for the block producer. Whereas you can have peers that, just never or very, very rarely are first to give you a header, and in which case those are probably downstream from you. And so they are not useful peers to select as upstream peers. So that's the metric we're using, and that's the promotion and demotion procedure. And what we're planning to do is, roughly speaking, like do a bit of churn, like demote 2, promote 2 every hour or something like that. The exact timing we'll figure out, and it may become a variable rate that sort of smooths out over time. And this gives a kind of an optimization procedure. Now, it may seem like a slightly odd metric. However, this is based on the research results. So this is the metric that we have simulated in large scale networks. We've done network, or our research partners have done a large scale, 10,000 node peer-to-peer graph network simulations using this policy. And we have shown in that simulation that this policy rapidly converges towards a topology of the peer-to-peer graph that is within a relatively small fraction of what is more or less optimal. So, which is frankly brilliant. We were originally aiming to get within like a factor of 2 of optimal, and we're well within that following this policy. So there's at some future point we'll do a better, more public presentation of maybe a blog post of some of these graphs and stuff from the research. But basically, the researchers have given us a very nice policy that relies on global knowledge. So obviously that's not directly implementable, and that's kind of like the theoretical optimum. And then this policy, which relies only on local information, gets within a small factor of that optimal policy. It doesn't do it immediately. It optimizes over time over a number of iterations, but it starts out okay and it gets really good. So that's the current status of things. We are going to be doing the more internal test nets, which Sam will be involved in, and then after that we'll move to an invite only public, semi-public test net, and then a public test net. The important features that we're going to get in for the next milestone before you guys get your hands on it is there's a minor feature that we need so that you can configure things for so that your relays and your block producers are always properly connected to each other. We discovered that the mechanisms we had weren't quite enough to configure for that policy, and that policy is obviously very important. You need your relays and your block producers to always be connected to each other, or being a target of trying to connect to each other.
So in this graph, is KYSN getting so many peers because they have more stake than everybody else?
So this is a slightly confusing visualization, I have to say. So maybe I should explain it more carefully. The structure of this is from the perspective of a single node. So this is the visualization here is Carl running just one node. This doesn't show that what we're doing now with 8 nodes in different parts of the world. So it's from the perspective of one node. The structure of the graph here is by continent, and then by country or region or whatever, and then it's the pool within that region, and then the number of little blobs there, I think corresponds to the upstreaminess metric. So that's we saw a header first from them.
Ah, okay.
I think that's correct. Yeah. And so one of the things you'll see here, if you jump forward like an hour or two, you'll see that the pools have changed because we've demoted the worst 2 and promoted 2 more random ones. And the other thing that you'll notice if you look at it at various steps through time is that we never end up in a kind of degenerate state where we only have peers from our local continent or something. And we do end up with a reasonably good spread. It's partly dependent, obviously, on the stake distribution, partly dependent on where stake pools actually are. But given that there are stake pools in North America, Europe.
So likely this node is in Germany, and it's basically getting the blocks fastest from KYSN because it's geographically closer.
Probably, yeah. This doesn't mean that they're being produced by KYSN. It just means that KYSN is the.
It's just that KYSN is the one that's
relay that we are
giving them
belonging to that stake pool, is the one that is very often getting us the header first. Yeah.
Okay, and
South
then
Africa,
I understood correctly. If I understood correctly, basically. Oh, sorry.
No, you go first. You go first.
If I understood correctly, basically the pools that have the most stake are going to take the brunt of the clients connecting to them.
We do
right? Because you said there's a little bit of weighted stake distribution, but it's not 100% weighted by the stake distribution.
That's right. And that's partly just because we can know about a lot of nodes. And, roughly speaking, most stake pools have got 1 or 2 relays. So we kind of can't oversample from the pools that have most stake because they only have 1 relay to give us. So in that set, that kind of tends to weight it back towards the smaller pools. And if necessary, we can introduce a scaling factor so that we don't bias it too much purely by stake. But it is useful for the security argument to take stake into account, and it also, it is also socially justifiable that the pools that have the most stake should provide more of the resources of for the infrastructure of the system.
Yeah, you could abstract that too. That basically they're going to get the most Daedalus clients connecting to them because they're weighted on the stake. So basically, they're going to have enough relays to be able to support that. So
there's a question about, do you have any metrics on upstream in South Africa? The answer is yes. Carl has been running this, as you see, this is from December, but we haven't bothered making lots of visualizations recently, but we will do another one when we get to our next public milestone. But Carl has been, right now, he is running eight of these demo nodes, and he's running those in all corners of the world, including South America and South Africa. And what he observes there is that things are roughly the same. That we still get, a good spread. Yes, there's not a lot of nodes actually in South Africa, but if you are based in South Africa, the view of the world from your perspective via this metric looks fairly similar. You end up with, a reasonable spread of nodes. And we have suggested to the team within IRHK that works on staking and delegation of IRHK's own stake, that IRHK should run some of their own pools, the private pools in different parts of the world, and also consider delegating to. This is just recommendation. I'm not saying this is what they'll do, but from the network team, we have a recommendation that the IRHK take advantage of their position to get some geographic distribution, because that will help other pools to be based in other parts of the world rather than just Europe and US and Asia. What was I saying before? Next milestones. Yeah, so there's this feature about being able to get more precise configuration so that your relays and your block producing nodes can always be. You can have a strong guarantee they'll always be talking to each other. And then the other important thing that we have to do before you guys can usefully lay your hands on it and give us feedback is that we need to get everything into master in such a way that that you can turn the peer-to-peer mode on or off by configuration. Whereas what we have right now for the development is we've just we've been doing it in a branch where we just ripped out the old stuff and we've replaced it all with the peer-to-peer stuff. But that won't fly for doing it in master. So we have to basically put in a big switch to switch between one or the other, and do a bit more code review, and then merge it all into master so that we can sort of turn it on or off, run it in peer-to-peer mode or not. Otherwise, you'd have to build everything from some funky combination of branches, and that's going to be a pain in the posterior. So that will be the main milestone for the semi-public invite only testnet, where we'll ask some of you to give us some feedback, and then the following testnet after that will be just a general public testnet, where we'll invite everyone to give us feedback. So that's it, Ben. I probably said too much.
No, actually, I think everybody's going to agree that listening to you is pretty awesome, Duncan. It's really interesting. Thank you. I know that in your first half of that update, you mentioned bugs, and I think we've got Jer on the call. Jer, can I ask you to come up to, I guess, the stage and give an introduction to yourself, who you are, and maybe an update?
Hello, I'm Gerard. I'm the Director of Operations. I'm not sure what update you want me to give, Ben. There's so many things that's going on right now.
I was twisting your arm. We're having a discussion about sort of bugs. And I thought, now, if I've got this wrong, is there any update on that? Or have I'm thinking about things.
So what? Sorry, I'm not too sure which one you're talking about.
I think about bugs and perhaps how we're going to.
Is it relating to recent bugs that were reported and stuff?
So really, I've been exploring bug bounty programs and DMing you and Tim about them.
The bug bounty program. Sorry, there's a lot going on. Yeah. So, no, I'm just thinking about that. So the bug bounty program is it's a program that we've been planning it and preparing this and thinking about this since I think Q3 or Q4 last year. It's not a trivial thing to kind of create a bug bounty program, and we're getting to the point now where we've kind of worked out the mechanics of it pretty well, and we're going to start inviting people to go through the process of understanding what the bug bounty program is and how it's going to work and the mechanics of it. And hopefully launching it in the not too distant future. So just for those of you who don't know, the bug bounty program is it's a mechanism whereby people can if they discover something that's a problem, they can, and they escalate it through the bug bounty program confidentially at the start, especially if there's something that, could give cause for alarm or concern. It's a way for us to quickly investigate it, put in place, remediation of various sorts in a short period of time before the issue is obviously published publicly. The bug bounty program is not about preventing any information from being released. It's about just carefully managing certain types of issues if they do occur, so that we can address them in a timely manner. And what we do as well as part of the bug bounty program is to recognize people who, in some cases put in a bit of effort to investigate issues and to document them and report them to us. So there'll be some sort of rewards mechanism in place for that as well, Ben. So yeah, I was thinking about different bugs, but but the bug bounty program is it's a very big and a very important initiative. And I think it's an element of maturity as well, that we're kind of getting to the stage now where Cardano is obviously growing, as you know. The technology is rapidly evolving. We're fast approaching the Alonzo hard fork, and where we're going to launch Plutus and smart contracts. So as we gain more utility and obviously the whole thing increases more in value, we need to have these more mature processes in place to make sure that we can deal with these things in a more structured way, and also investing in the people who take time to, in some cases, as I say, they take time out of their day to investigate these things, document them, and report them to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's like a simple heuristic here. When I first joined, people that were part of the ITN and said like the field of vision from then until now has really broadened. There's so much more going on, the innovations on the edges. So it's really super important people know where to go for what they need. If they've got an issue or something, the journey needs to know about. If you need to know where the updates are, it's in the digest. Make sure you're subscribed.
I think you're right. So like we've things have changed an awful lot since you and I joined. I think for once I had hair. No, I don't. But there we go. Some bad things have happened, but on the other side of it, like we've got a much larger community now, and we've got different communities. We've got this community, which is like, I think, our bedrock, the foundation, people who operate the network, and we also have a growing developer community, and there's a lot more people using the software and doing things with it and contributing to its improvement. So yeah, this is a good time to be rolling this process out, I think.
Good, that's excellent. I know we haven't got much time left, and I'm going to remind everybody that's joined, we're following the Chatham House rules. I've posted that a few times. It means that you can talk about what you've heard, but we're asking you not to say where you heard it or who you heard it from. That's Chatham House rules. Jared, that was fantastic. Thank you. Kevin, last but not least, could you give us an introduction as to who you are and an update?
Hi, Ben. So I'm Kevin Hammond. I'm one of the technical managers at IOG. I think Duncan's basically given us a very good update from the node side, particularly about obviously the issue we had the last the 259.260 epoch boundary and peer-to-peer. The only other thing I think that's important to say is we're starting to put together the next normal release of the node. Expect to see that coming out probably next week or thereabouts. So keep your eyes open. And there'll be a number of improvements that SPAs have asked for in the CLI and other places.
I've done a terrible injustice, Kevin. I've forgotten to ask Alex to give us his update. Do you think?
So one thing that's worth mentioning is the query. We should have the query tip command in there. I think Martin